Hello from Sasha and me, and welcome to the programme.
First tonight, it's been revealed that a paedophile who's just been sentenced for attacking an 11-year-old girl is being prescribed Viagra.
A children's charity has reacted with anger that 71-year-old Roger Martin from Dogsthorpe in Peterborough is being given the drug.
Now, GPs don't have access to the sex offenders register, and patients aren't required to tell them their criminal convictions. But tonight there are calls for a change in the law.
Well, Claire McGlasson joins us now from outside Roger Martin's sheltered housing. Claire.
Yes, you join me this evening in the Dogsthorpe area of Peterborough, but I won't reveal exactly where I am, and that's to protect all the residents of this sheltered housing scheme. The average age in this quiet cul-de-sac is 82 years old, some of them very elderly, some of them very frail, all of them, it seems, very shocked that one of their neighbours, a 71-year-old widower, has pleaded guilty to abusing a child. He wasn't sent to jail, but Roger Martin has made himself a prisoner in his own home after his secret became front-page news. A paedophile who assaulted an 11-year-old girl. A paedophile who is still being prescribed Viagra on the NHS. The court heard that Martin had a history of sexual offending, having been convicted in 1978 of unlawful sex with a 15-year-old girl. But Martin's barrister argued that his age and ill health meant that he wouldn't be able to cope with a prison sentence. In Peterborough today, there was anger from parents.
Well, it's disgusting, isn't it? It shouldn't be allowed.
I think it's totally disgusting. Absolutely terrible.
Fair enough, they have rights, but what about the rights of the children?
Passing sentence, Judge Nicholas Coleman said it was with great hesitation that he decided not to send Martin to prison. He said that Martin's use of Viagra was a case of public interest. He told him, "You seem to wish to persist in applying for this sexually stimulating drug, and you continue to be prescribed it." But the authorities say there's nothing they can do to stop his supply. Today, Peterborough Primary Care Trust said patients are not required when registering with a GP to declare any criminal convictions, adding it's a GP's individual decision to prescribe medication to a patient. But Cambridgeshire Probation Service said we would not and could not attempt to alter an offender's prescription. One charity says we need to do more to protect our children.
We know that he is dangerous, we know that he has these tendencies, and we are actually giving him a medication which enhances the very urges which make him a danger to children.
Martin pleaded guilty to the charge. The judge ordered him to attend a 3-year treatment programme and has imposed a sexual offence prevention order.
So, Claire, do you think this could prompt a change in the law?
Well, there are certainly calls for that change. At the moment, this situation, Martin falls between two camps, if you like. A GP would have no idea about someone's criminal convictions unless the patient themselves owned up to it. And the probation service says it's just not allowed to meddle in medical matters. So he's left still being prescribed Viagra, and we, as the taxpayer, are still footing the bill. Well, you mentioned a change in the law there. Stuart Jackson, the local MP, has already spoken out about this and called it a bizarre and outrageous situation. He says this is an example of where common sense gets thrown out of the window in preference to so-called human rights and political correctness, and that's a view shared by many of the people I've spoken to in Peterborough today. Many of them, I have to say, just couldn't believe that it was actually true. Now, unless a change in the law does happen, it does seem from speaking to the various agencies involved that not one of them has the power to stop this and to plug this loophole.
Claire, thank you. Next tonight, and it was the journey from hell. What should have been a 2-hour train trip turned into an all-night one.
Passengers on board the 11:30 service from London Liverpool Street last night eventually arrived into Norwich at 6:30 this morning. National Express has apologised and promised to pay more than the usual level of compensation.
But by chance, our correspondent Malcolm Robertson was one of those stranded on the train. This is his report.
There are no prizes for guessing who John Royal supports. Last night he managed to get away from his duties at the Cricketers' Arms pub in Norwich to watch his football team play in London. But never did he realise what a long day and night it would be. He was one of almost 200 people left stranded when the last train from London broke down twice and eventually arrived in Norwich at 7:25 this morning, more than 7 hours after it left Liverpool Street.
Raced across London to catch the train, and what a waste of time, really, you know. It's just awful, absolutely awful.
I was among those on board and took pictures on my mobile phone of increasingly disgruntled passengers. The train left Liverpool Street at 11:30 and 20 minutes later stopped at Ingatstone, where the guard informed passengers there was a fault with the engine and a new one would have to be brought in. 3 hours later at 3:10, the train finally left Ingatstone, but 40 minutes later it stopped between Colchester and Manningtree, with the guard saying there was another fault and it would have to return to Colchester. At 4:35 it arrived there. It's now more than 5 hours since we set off from Liverpool Street. In fact, it's 5 hours and 20 minutes and we're at Colchester. The frustration was building up. Josie Robertson and her friends had spent the day in London and had taken in a show. She knew her husband would be worried.
I'm waiting till about 6 to phone him up to tell him why I'm not in bed.
You can't get anything to eat and I'm desperate for a bacon sandwich.
Scott Freeman and his mates had been to watch the Norwich game, a match Norwich lost.
They were dreadful. Got on a train and their service even worse. All in all, good day. Good day round.
At 5:10, the train finally pulled out of Colchester. After a 15-minute stop at Ipswich, it left there at 5:50, and the weary passengers eventually arrived at Norwich at 7:25 this morning, 7 hours and 5 minutes after they left London. It takes just over 7 hours to fly from London to New York, but you could get to Dubai in the time the train took from London to Norwich, and you would have an hour to spare if you'd flown from London to Cairo. They'd seen the sun rise over Manningtree and Ipswich, but the dawning of a bright new day did little to lift spirits. National Express East Anglia, whose services have recently been hit by 48-hour strikes, apologised to passengers. It's carrying out an investigation and says it will be paying out compensation over and above what is agreed as part of the passengers' charter. Picking up compensation forms proved to be of scant consolation, with many of those leaving the station having had no sleep and facing the prospect of a day's work. Malcolm Robertson, Anglia News.
Our very own Malcolm Robertson, as you heard there, our very own weary passenger joins us now. You said there about the sleep, lack of sleep. Was it as hideous as it sounds?
It was a long night and it was a long train journey. I reckon that's the longest train journey I've ever been on, 7 hours, 5 minutes. And it was interesting. It was almost like a travelling club. People were angry, they were annoyed, they were frustrated. But as dawn broke, people realised, well, there's nothing we can do. There was great resilience. I think they felt sorry for the guard, the female guard, who was trying to keep people in touch, but she wasn't getting a lot of information. So I think people felt, well, there's nothing we can do. Let's just sit here and hope we'll get home one day.
Clearly a very difficult night for all of you. You were saying earlier you didn't get a wink of sleep, but there was one man who did, wasn't there?
There was. I was actually sitting in the quiet carriage, and there was one guy who was snoring away. He was the lucky one. Everybody else was sort of texting people saying, look, don't pick me up because I'm not going to be there. And he slept through it all. Lucky guy.
OK, Malcolm, for now, go home, get some sleep. Thank you very much. Well, some of the day's other news, and 3 children have been rescued off the Norfolk Coast after their inflatable dinghy overturned this morning. 2 lifeboats and a rescue helicopter were called as the children drifted out to sea at Cley. They were saved by 3 members of the public, including a cross-channel swimmer who swam out and brought them safely ashore.
Meanwhile, part of Sea Palling Beach in Norfolk was closed off this afternoon after a suspected wartime mortar bomb was discovered. Holiday makers were told to leave a section of the beach while police cordoned the area off. An army bomb disposal team is due to deal with the device this evening.
Royal Mail staff in Essex and Peterborough began a 24-hour strike this morning in an ongoing dispute over working conditions.
The Communication Workers Union has accused Royal Mail of cutting pay and jobs without any